Matt Bomer. I'm sure you guys have loads you want to ask, but I'll just kick off with a couple of questions myself. I wonder, John, if you can just take us back to the start and tell us where this story...
Because I think frequently between men, the very fact that it isn't permitted to get to a level of real intimacy is what allows men, and that's what enables people to connect to each other, you know. Yeah, that always fascinates me about men, how that occurs and what the value of it is. I'm a big fan of friendship in my own life. I think it's been a very sustaining thing for me, and I think it's undervalued in terms of our artistic representation. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of buddy movies and films and TV shows and books that explore that theme.
Of course, a big difference in this film compared to others is where it's set.
We're piled into one big house that we were all staying in, so it kind of got a very family-like atmosphere very quickly. And really you find the kind of machinations of it are the same ultimately wherever you go.
And ultimately, those of you in the audience who know about the relationship between our two countries, we're nomads, the Irish, so we have a tradition of going and quietly invading other territories. We're quiet, benign invaders, and I think it's important when you're making a film in another culture. We made a film a few years back in Havana, Cuba, called Viva. It's important that you respect the culture, but it's, you know, it's also very easy as producers if you have someone like John, who has, over the years of living in LA, has so internalized a really finely judged sense of what that city's about. So we were just kind of delighted to quietly invade alongside him.
I think the location manager, road directions, was also a pretty good one that John was able to direct him around.
I think he thought I was clinically insane, and he may be right, ultimately, who knows, but yeah, that was nice to be able to do that.
Of course, so much of the success of the film lies in the central relationship and in the hands of you.
To do the same thing and give in our rehearsal process and in our performances, and just living the moments of the scenes. So that was, to me, that was the process for me.
Yeah, we were very fortunate to have a week of rehearsal, which always helps hugely, especially when you're given such time constraints on a smaller film. And also, we're fortunate to have an amazing writer-director. There are writer-directors you work with who are very precious about every punctuation mark, and John really knew the thematic elements of the piece, but he also gave us a lot of free rein to improvise and see what worked in the moment. And I think that ended up helping us out a lot in the process.
Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask? If you do, just raise your hand and we've got a couple of mics.
Was the 11th one, and I'm just wondering what you used to draw upon to bring that out.
Oh, well, I prefer not to say specifically, but yeah, there was something very specific that John and I had discussed ahead of time. It was, you know, one of the many things that resonated with me in the script that I thought, oh, this is something that I want to explore. And but yeah, it was very, you know, hopefully personal and specific. And I'm glad you responded. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been crying for these.
Do we have any other questions? Yeah.
Hi. First of all, I want to congratulate you all because the movie is fantastic. You made them great, Alejandro. You made me laugh just by your face without saying anything. You're hilarious. Congratulations. I've seen in the credits that you're thanking Madonna. Is there a story behind Borderline song? By the way, it's my favorite scene. Love it.
I'm just, I'm Madonna's cousin, and I owe her money.
She's actually here with us tonight.
And she's here. No, obviously the scene in question was written with that song in mind, but you never know. Like the mechanics of the film business are such, or I would say the low-budget film business are such that you can't guarantee the clearance and use of all the songs that you want, and it's always a very tricky process, and it's one that Treasure are very adroit at navigating through. So we shot that scene with 3 songs, is that right? 3 songs, yeah, and we did a couple of takes of each song, but Borderline was the one that we really wanted most desperately to use, because obviously thematically it's so perfect, but it's also funny, and it speaks equally to the life of a gay man of a certain age and a Latino guy of a certain age. So it was always something that I was desperate to be able to use, and we managed. I think it was like a team effort in terms of Matt knew some people who knew some people, and Treasure knew some people who knew some people, and I wrote a letter, and you know, there was months of trying to get to. I guess she's a busy person. I have no idea. I have no idea what she does. Since writing Borderline, it seems to me like she's endured a very fallow period. However, we did get through to her eventually, and she very kindly gave us the use of the song. And I think, to be honest, you know, I'm such a fan of hers that I'd like to thank her in every film. So, but no, I was so greatly indebted to her for it that yeah, it had to be acknowledged in the credits. So.
Can I ask you one more thing?
Absolutely. You're way over your quota, but.
How did you get the title of Papichulo? What made you name that movie Papichulo?
Just in case anyone couldn't hear it back, it was about the title of the film. Where did that come from?
I'm really happy to just actually maybe just leave that and just have it be something. No, I'm glad you asked the question, but to me, I think it relates to a minimum of 2 characters in the film, and it's a lovely piece of language that you hear so often in and around. Yeah, and I just think it's lovely. It's a lovely phrase, and it's a really interesting phrase, and I think there's a couple of nice resonances there that are kind of enjoyable to consider. So I won't give a strict definition, but hope that makes sense.
Are there any other questions? Yes.
I was wondering how you got to the little mannerisms that Sean has, like the walk and the head thing and the arm. How do you develop that?
You know, it's one of those things that you just try to do all the homework you can and you know, access your imagination as best you can, and then kind of let it rip on the day and hope for the best. And I had a director who was very, you know, supportive and, you know, encouraging, and some of the tics were I mean, even the way I stood in the hardware store, which I was really just copying John.
I'm literally standing in that position as we speak.
Yes. So yeah, I guess it's a culmination of a lot of different things, and then you just hope that you can kind of get out of your head and make it not a cerebral thing, and just let the spirit of the character take over. Thank you.
I would say that Matt is I hadn't perhaps seen him do this specific type of performance before, but he's a wonderfully adept actor with all the way up and down the range of physical stuff, and it's a joy to be able to see that expressed, so I was very grateful.
Are there any other questions? Yes.
Hi, this is for Alejandro. I'm interested what technique you used to pretend that you didn't understand the word that Matt was saying, because you did it so well.
No sé lo que está hablando. I pretty much embodied my grandfather and my parents, my dad.
It was in the movie.
It was in the movie, yeah. He's in the kitchenette scene talking with me. We both have the little hats on. And I had some family members in that party scene. So I could pretty much embody, especially my grandfather, because we had a business in Compton where I grew up, and he would always try to say things to people who would buy things. And my favorite line or comment that he would always say, well, how much is this pack of cigarettes? Oh, it's 55. It's 55 cents. So embodying his imagery and his language is what I brought to the film.
And I might just pay a little tribute to Alejandro as well. I think it's really difficult to, and I'm really glad you asked that question, because I think it's really difficult to play something that isn't necessarily a lack of comprehension, but contains no judgment, and doesn't misdirect the audience in any way. There's a level of ambiguity there that it takes real skill and talent to sit in that area, because there's not much wriggle room around it, and I think it's incredible what he did. Again, I'm equally grateful to him as I am to Matt. So.
Thank you.
We've got time for a couple more if there's any other questions anyone would like to ask.
The question is for you, Matt. How are your Spanish skills after working with Alejandro?
Well, you saw them improve throughout this film. You know, a lot of the interactions we had were basically the remedial Spanish that I understand from growing up in Texas and having taken a couple of years of it in school. And, yeah, so it's about what you saw in the film, I guess.
Is there one last question that anyone would like to ask? Yeah, is there just a question up on the side there? Is there?
Do you want me to
Is
shout?
there anyone with a mic over there? Oh, no, it's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Producers want to do everything.
Thank you for the film. It's brilliant. I just wanted to ask John if there's any real difference between making a film at home and a film in a place you've kind of adopted as a home.
Thank you. There are a million tiny things. Obviously, in Ireland or in the UK, the struggle is to get light into a scene, and in LA. So you see a lot of flags in LA, and you see a lot of lights in Ireland and the UK, and that's kind of an interesting one for a cinematographer to get his head around. And our DP is an Irish man called Colin Waters, who did an amazing job with that, I think. Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of makes you realise why they tend to make films in Los Angeles. You know, it's like a wonderful natural resource. It's beautiful, and it kind of ties into my own affection for the city, actually, is how it looks. So that was one thing. I don't know, other than that, it's weird how I consider this still to be an Irish film. I guess that's defined by the creative talent involved, and it's an interesting proposition to make an Irish film that is thematically unconcerned with what it is to be Irish, actually, but, you know, apart from our kind of shared humanity. But, so yeah, the similarities between the two environments are probably more interesting to me than what makes them different. But the other thing, the last thing I'll say is that just as a kid growing up, you know, chips was obviously a massively important piece of work for me, and remains so to this day. I'm obviously referring specifically to Eric Estrada. The other guy was good as well, but the landscape of Los Angeles and the canyons and the brown hills and the freeways and stuff like that, there's a romantic attachment to that as a European. That's really, really interesting and fun to go over and explore and put on camera over there. So I guess it's the attraction of what's foreign to you that is something that resonates. So yeah. It's enjoyable to make a film in Los Angeles. Maybe I'll get to do it again. So thank you.
You guys have made such a beautiful film. I mean, please do tell everyone about this film. We really want people to see this beautiful piece of work. Please join me in thanking all these guys for coming out. Thank you.